to their televisions. The Old Man of Hoy.
There is a magic about live television. We were watching the best people at their art, and they were climbing something extremely difficult.
Even now, 25 years later, people who remember it, even though they know nothing about climbing at all.
It was really a milestone in television outside broadcast history.
At that time, I don't think many people even knew that the Old Man of Hoy existed. And they saw this picture of this Old Man of Hoy, and I never realised anything like that existed anywhere in the planet, never mind up in Scotland. And it was so new, and it was so fresh, and so incredible. And there was this thing sticking out of the sea. It just seemed, my goodness, where did that come from? Has it always been there? Did they build it? It must have been the BBC that built it.
The live coverage of the climb was transmitted over 2 days. The programme had an immense amount of pre-publicity, and the interest from national newspapers was quite extraordinary. They sent reporters up to Hoy in the days before the transmission, so the public was very aware of this, and the public were very enthused and gripped by the notion of a live event climb like this, and one in which anything might happen.
There was a tremendous concentration of talent, really, because all these people were really international stars, and having them all together like that, it was a tremendous team spirit.
That's fine, gentlemen. Just towards the camera, please. Straight this way. Yeah, straight this way.
Yeah. I mean, they look kind of from the Dark Ages.
Well, it looks pre-water.
It does, yes.
It's a really good memory,
This is the story of an invasion. An apparently simple invasion requiring only one tank landing craft. On board is £200,000 worth of television equipment, a complete outside broadcast unit en route from the Clyde to the Orkney Islands.
We were going to a very, very distant location with absolutely no backup at all. We were going to an island that didn't have a ferry that could carry our vehicles. We were going to a location on the island that had no electric power, no accommodation, no means of providing food, and we had to find ways of creating that backup ourselves.
Full astern, starboard.
Full astern, starboard.
As there was no ferry terminal point, the only thing we could do was to land on the beach.
Stop engine.
One mobile control room, alone worth £100,000. One pantechnicon to carry the cables, one radio links van to bounce the pictures back to the mainland, and assorted other vehicles, heading for the most outlandish outside broadcast spot ever imagined. The television unit's job is to make a program, to bring to 10 million viewers live pictures of the climber's assault on the Old Man of Hoy, the most spectacular rock pinnacle in the British Isles. The telemen stay in Stromness, and they go to work every morning in Ginger Brown's taxi service across Scarpa Flow.
We travelled in 3 fishing boats across to the island of Hoy. And the third one was a rather smaller launch, which we called the Submarine, because we felt it spent more time going through the waves than over.
Two miles from the Old Man, a platoon of the Scots Guards sets up base camp. Accustomed to the jungles of Malaya and Borneo, this is for them an exercise in living in the remote parts of their own land.
This was done in very much the pioneering days of television, and we were determined somehow or other to get the OB scanner, this 12-ton truck, to the top of the hill overlooking the Old Man. And that meant traversing the 2 miles of peat bog and so on. And the plan was to winch the sledge with the scanner on board to the top of the mountain.
This porridge cannot possibly support the weight of a mobile control room. so every piece of equipment has to be de-rigged and manhandled onto the sledges.
Someone's heading here.
And when the slope becomes too steep for the tractors, the sledges are hauled up by wire. 30 tons of equipment in half-ton loads, 60 loads in all. In this vast expanse of unpopulated country, the advanced base on top of the cliffs, looking out to the Old Man, is no more than a dot on the moorland.
Having set everything up in the tent, we came back 2 days before the transmission, early in the morning. It was a moment of near despair as we walked over the top of the crest of the hill, and suddenly the silhouette of the tent was no longer there. It was just a heap of flapping canvas. And, I mean, it really was heartbreaking.
A westerly gale blowing in from one of those Icelandic depressions has ripped down 2 marquees, shredded a third. Somewhere here, there is £100,000 worth of delicate electronic equipment.
There'd been very heavy rain, and so all the equipment was full of water. So we had to take it out of the ruined tent, get another tent, set it all up again, use hair dryers and fans and anything else to dry the equipment. And that really was an immense problem to us, and we almost felt that we weren't going to get on the air. We just didn't know if we could get it to work again.
The threads go the different way, you know. No, well, they can't do it. It's impossible.
There was a tree, a rare tree, a rattling tree.
Untangle the cables, pull out the plugs, move it all to another site, and still meet tomorrow's deadline.
Down in the valley, oh, was a branch, a rare branch, a rattling branch. Tree in the bog down in the valley, oh. Rattling bog about down in the valley, oh, rare bog, rattling bog about down in the valley. Oh. You sing it fast you want.
The climbers must train. Target for today is this mini pinnacle, only just over 100 feet high, and there is only one way to it. The Sherpas, as they are called, are led by the Vicar of Peter, Sidney Wilkinson, climbing past them.
Sidney was a sheet metal worker in Eccles who went to a revival meeting and learnt that angels, if you pray, angels will actually save you. And he was stuck on this crag and was about to fall off, soloing, huge crag, and he prayed for the first time in his life, and sure enough, the angels turned up and held him on. And forever afterwards, he climbed always with 2 angels behind him, which was why he was a terribly dangerous climber. But he never fell off.
This is the master climber, Joe Brown.
Hey, well, don't let it go too fast. Oh, the boys march at dawn from the south to the north, led by Kelly, the boy from Kip. Hey, I'm just singing to keep me pecker up.
Ah, got it, he's talking.
Joe Brown, the greatest rock climber in the world. Now, at 36, he is better than he has ever been, and he has always been the best. Once in a generation, no more, you get such a man who breaks through the accepted barriers of his craft. This is the master at work, on rock which no man has touched, which he has never seen before.
There's a bloody great rock here that I want to get rid of.
Joe's looking a bit worried now. It's getting very steep and the rock is getting worse the higher he gets. Once he gets into the crack, his foot is really well way behind him in a sling to stop him swinging backwards. As soon as he gets, he's coming back now. And as soon as he can get into the cracks in the corner, he's more or less cracked it. He's right in the corner now, into the cracks. And he's looking much more comfortable. He's now looking for some protection to protect the last 10 feet. If he fall off now, it'd really go a horrible long way. He's not bothering, he's just continuing. Well, that's just about it now.
Joe's castle is only a mini pinnacle, a quarter of the size of the Old Man of Hoy. Tomorrow, it will be the old man's turn. Now the camera platforms and lights must be lowered over these cliffs, an operation supervised by Hamish McInnes, the Glencoe Mountain Rescue Chief.
The means of getting the equipment down to the bottom of the stack was a technique I developed here for taking people off mountains, off rock faces, a cableway system where we had very long ropes and the patients were lowered down the ropes and pulleys. And they went down very safely and smoothly. And I remember Alan Chivers was watching one day when I was loading this camera, and he says, "Do you realize the cost of that camera, the disaster it will be if anything happens?" I says, "Alan, we're usually lowering humans down here, which are more valuable than your camera." So he's quite satisfied with that, I think.
The television cameras, whose innards are as delicate as a Dowager Duchess's, have to be masked in foam rubber.
The top half of this weighs over 100 weight, just from here upwards, and that's all had to be taken down the cliff. I mean, nowadays a camera, you would put it on your shoulder and carry it down.
This is BBC One.
Nowhere around our shores is there a greater challenge to the spirit of the mountaineer than this, the most awesome pinnacle in the British Isles. Long regarded as utterly unscalable, the Old Man was climbed for the first time last year. Today, with a gale blowing out of the west, two members of that pioneer party, Chris Bonington and Tom Patey, will attempt their original route. On the east face, the solid white line here, and then there are two more routes going to be attempted. The one on the far left, the dotted white line, which wends its way across the south face. This is a virgin route. Most of it has never been climbed before. And Joe Brown and Ian McNaught Davis launched their assault up this line. The central route, straight up the southeast arête, is also virgin. A most ferocious line, which Dougal Haston and Pete Crew have been inching their way up for the past 3 days. First, we look at the south face. Somewhere there are 4 climbers and 4 radio cameramen. There you can see the radio cameraman on the gallery. Above them, another party of radio cameramen. And at the top of the picture, in the center, Joe Brown inching up a flake. And to his right, there is Dougal Haston on that southeast arête. First, we go to Joe Brown, 36 years old. In 1955, he climbed Kanchenjunga, over 28,000 feet, the 3rd highest mountain in the world. He's just clipping in. He's prepared this section of the route, just the very bottom part. There we can see our radio cameraman shooting straight up at him. Rusty Bailey with a beard, who holds the radio camera, and behind them with the glasses, Ian McNaught Davis. He's 37 years old, a Yorkshireman, now the general manager of a computer company in London.
God, I haven't progressed. 25 years and still doing the same job.
And on the right, there's Dougal Haston on the southeast arête. This really is a most tremendous route, which he and Pete Crew have been bashing their way up, and I don't think there's any other word for the past 3 days. Dougal is really at the top of his craft now. He's only 26 years old, the only bachelor, in fact, in the party. He comes from Scotland, but he now lives in Switzerland. You may remember that he was the man who put up that tremendous direct route on the north face of the Eiger, which took them a month 2 winters ago.
Hang on, Joe, this block's loose out.
The Old Man of Hoy climb happened very early on in my career, and I was a very young director within the events department at the time.
2 radio cameras.
Well, say we put the 2 radio cameras
Well,
together, side by side, and put the Icky separately.
Good heavens, now I remember. That's Gilbert. Yeah, it's Gilbert. That's Gilbert.
Ridiculous couple.
Getting the television pictures and sound off the Old Man of Hoy and back down to Glasgow and hence to London and to all the viewers was exceedingly difficult. And whereas we do that nowadays by using one satellite, what we would term one hop in terms of bouncing the signal from the start point to the BBC's main centre, it was done with 8 separate microwave links, and the transmitters had to be in line of sight of each other. Therefore, there were 8 transmitters and receivers put on the highest mountains between Hoy and Glasgow, and the signal was sent from one to the other.
Yeah. My God, this flapping's going to be a problem, isn't it? Yeah. Well, on an open mic, if it's in vision, we're going to get the flapping from his tent, and we won't hear that because we'll be listening to the flapping in our tent.
We did take really quite a lot of risks, and I think many of us were really quite concerned as to just how much of it was going to work. One of the problems we faced with climbers on the cliff was trying to work out how we could put microphones on them so that we could hear them describe for us and the viewers what was happening.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Right, and this is the hardest move on this pitch, I think. I've got to somehow turn round here, and I've only got a rather bad ham jam it right inside the crack, and I've got to swing right out. It's quite heavy looking move by the look of it, and get myself cocked right up, trying to just bang my head then, and I can now, I hope, straighten up.
The problem was that the distance between the transmitters and the receivers was such that we were right on the edge of the technology.
Pete, what sort of progress did you make this morning?
Hello, you trying to get me, Chris?
I was.
Yeah, there's a little crackling.
Dougal, can you hear me? No, unfortunately, he's so tied up there that he's affecting his radio mic.
We used 4 cameras for the programme. There was one at the top of the cliff overlooking the top of the Old Man, because it was obviously essential to be able to look straight across at the victorious climbers when they got there, on the basis that we believed they would eventually get there. There was one-third the way down the sea cliffs looking at the Old Man of Hoy. There was a third camera about a third the way up from the beach, and that was a key camera for the earlier part of the climb. It was also able to look up fairly diagonally and give quite good dramatic shots looking up behind the climbers. And camera 4 was on the beach, giving us probably the most elegant, stunning shot of the Old Man silhouetted against the sky.
I had to climb down the 400 foot of cliff to the beach every day, and I had the camera that looked up at the Old Man. I was as tight as I could get with the zoom lens. I'd probably have a climber in, but I'd see all the climber. I wouldn't be able to get close enough in those days to see details. All the details were taken by the climbers who were actually on the Old Man carrying cameras.
The most important additional cameras were the 2 radio cameras. And they are about the same size as the sort of handheld cameras you see used for news nowadays and often see at sporting events. But they had a second man with a backpack which carried the transmitter. The radio cameras were, in a sense, a development of industrial television cameras, so they didn't have the resolution and quality of the big outside broadcast cameras, but they were vital to us because they were the only things that we could get onto the face of the old man.
Well, here we go, way out into space. Let's hope Chris has fixed that hope well up above.
We took the value judgment that the closeness to the climbers and the drama that they could bring to the viewer more than justified the less good picture quality, and I think we were right.
Chris, we can see down onto you now from Hamish McInnes's radio camera.
Ah, yes.
A most magnificent view we had just then of the sea below you. You're pinned almost there above what now a 250-foot drop. Don't you have a fear of heights at all?
I don't have one normally on rock. I have a very, I think it's a practical one. For instance, if I'm leading a pitch and I've got no running belays at all, and I know I will fall 100 feet or more if I come off, I'm very afraid. This is a bit awkward, actually.
Well, don't talk if it's awkward.
I'll stop just for a second until I've got some decent holes again.
Joe Brown, just directly above him, Dougal Haston.
Can you take it tight in the rope while I go down for this pin?
Dougal, you've been on this 2 days now, but that really is a comparatively short time to your 30 days on the Eiger.
Yeah.
What drives you to attempt these sort of routes?
I just like finding out what makes myself tick, and this is a good way of doing it. When you drive yourself to the limit like this, you really get to know something about yourself. You learn the limits of your physical and mental endurance in really difficult situations.
Dougal was really one of the leading mountaineers in Britain. He had a tremendous background to high altitude climbing and difficult alpine climbing. He was a very, very quiet individual. When he did have something to say, it made sense and it was interesting.
It was getting late. The men on the new routes were, of course, making slower progress and looking for somewhere to spend the night. This old man gives a climber the same feeling as a major alpine route, a sense that once launched on the rock, he is committed to it. Joe Brown and Ian McNaught Davis found their bivouac site on the southwest arête, at a place where the elements have carved a great bite out of the rock. Joe, how comfortable are you there?
Hello, Chris. This ledge is quite a big one, as you can probably see. We're not at all comfortable at the moment because the pitch was a bit more difficult than we expected and it took us longer, and so we haven't got our gear up yet, but I should think that once we've got organised we'll be very comfortable.
We hauled up this bag and inside was a gas stove, 2 pounds of steak and a bottle of scotch, and although from a dietary point of view in modern diet it wasn't considered to be totally balanced, by the time we'd drunk it and eaten it we weren't totally balanced.
Well, a safe and comfortable as it can be night to you, Joe. We'll go and see how Dougal and Pete are getting on. Dougal?
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Dougal. You've had some pretty wicked bivouacs, particularly the winter before last on the north face of the Eiger. How does this compare?
Well, this is fantastically comfortable, Chris. I've got a hammock slung here from two expansion bolts, and I feel really relaxed.
Can you turn your head round so we can see you a bit more? And that's it.
I feel much better than I did on my last bivouac in the Eiger, which was a step cut out of the ice, and I was sitting in slings then.
In what sort of temperatures?
Oh, the average temperature was minus 40 centigrade, and the wind was around about 100 miles per hour. Yeah. So it wasn't a very comfortable night, as this is going to be, I think.
Pete, you look as if you've got a brew going there.
Yeah, it's great. We've only been here about 20 minutes, but we've got a brew on. It's always the first thing you do.
Filming the bivouac that night, it was quite eerie up there, about, say, 300 feet up, and you could hear the surf beating down below. It really was a very difficult situation because I was hanging free on slings filming this place, and because of being dark all around, it's quite an eerie
an eerie feeling. The transmission went out, I think, about 11:45, just before midnight. And because of union problems, the electricians left at 11:45. And we had to get back down again. There was no, it's a vertical cliff face. So Alan Chivers agreed to stay on and keep the generators running so we could abseil back down the stack again and get into our sleeping bags for the rest of the night.
I remember staying until everybody else had gone, which was normal. I mean, if you were in charge of the thing, you didn't dash down to the pub until all your boys were safe.
It was a wicked night. A gale was blowing in from the west with intermittent rainstorms. But by the morning, they were all climbing again. Ah, Mac?
Hello, Chris.
I'm reading you loud and clear. This sounds a very harrowing night you had.
Well, I was bitten by this bird, and I woke up and said, Joe, the birds are attacking us, and he was lying fast asleep on his back with his mouth wide open. And I thought if I watched long enough, I'd see one of them puking it. So I did, but fell asleep again. But as Joe said, it wasn't... Strangely enough, although it rained a lot, we were able to keep dry because we were right under these overhangs. What a place. It's just like climbing over a stack of gigantic dinner plates, all of them cracking and crumbling. And with this rucksack on, you can't get into the crack. You're leaning right out.
Is the rock very bad?
Yes. It's sort of stuff that will break off with half my weight. Never mind anything else, I'm pulling directly out in that bong, Joe. Oh, dear. Oh, that was something that crumbled under my feet. You see, as soon as you get above the overhang, you can't see what your feet are on, and things just crumble and crack away. I'm relatively secure, though, with the master up there giving me the old G-sharp.
I didn't think there was very much possibility of us not being able to get up. Did
That's
you?
because you were leading.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would have felt very insecure if you had.
I don't think I'll ever forget last night. I suppose some people ask when you've got the opportunity of staying in a hotel, why you do it. Well, I suppose the answer is, it's memorable. You don't forget it very readily.
Pete, can you hear me?
Yeah, just a minute. Good. Okay, go on.
What sort of a night did you have?
Sorry?
What sort of a night did you have?
Oh, it wasn't too bad. We were fairly sheltered from the wind. Yeah, really warm. But yeah, we couldn't complain, really.
What sort of standard of climbing compared to other artificial climbing that you've done is this arête?
This whole arête is some of the hardest artificial I've ever done. You can't get pegs in properly, and even the bolts that you put in don't hold very well because of the friability of the rock.
Yeah. Thank you, Dougal. They've been at work on this all morning. This is very sophisticated, very modern mountaineering, frowned on by the old school, who call it just mechanical climbing, but it requires tremendous strength and patience and, of course, skill. You've got to keep a very cool head so that you don't get various ropes and slings fouled up. Dougal, if it's not too difficult, can you explain exactly what you're doing now?
Yes, I'm just moving up onto the next piton, and my job on this pitch is to take out the pitons that Pete has put in, which is sometimes more difficult than actually placing them, because often they're driven in such a way and in such awkward positions that you have to lean back and get into all sorts of contortions to try and get them out.
You can see that Pete Crew is well out from Dougal. It shows the overhang. Pete Crew at the top of the picture in the white, Dougal in the dark clothes. You must get a lot of criticism from the older school of mountaineers who say that this artificial climbing is no more than steeplejacking.
It depends on, on the people who you're talking about. I mean, some of the older school realise that, we've got to make advances in climbing just the same as they did.
Yeah, but sort of 30 years ago, people were criticised for using techniques which were then considered modern, but are now considered completely normal. Each generation of climbers have got to progress, and yeah, this is our way of progressing.
Yeah.
Well, this is real good old-fashioned climbing. There's not much to hold on to, but I'm pressing up with my left hand now. I've got a reasonable jam to my right, and it's all by a kind of counter pressure. Once again, I can use a counter pressure again, this time with my right hand, and I can just push my right feet up high onto quite a good ledge. I'm just using what the rock has to offer me to work my way up. It's a hard move here. I got to get my left foot right up, almost by my thigh. I'll push up once again, I think, with my left hand. That's it. I'm right. Oh, I'm off balance. Still, now I'm all right.
Good. Well, we'll go across now and see how Mac is getting on. Just coming round the corner. There's Joe Brown on the right. McNaught Davis coming across now. Hello, Mac.
Hello, Chris. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
It's a very funny position, is this. Your feet are on big holes, and your hands are on big holes, but you're leaning right out of balance. Joe, you go under this thing. You go under it. It's... there is literally nothing between us and the ground.
What's your up, Matt?
Hello?
Is there up?
Frightening position, I must say.
Balanced on the very prow of the southeast direction.
Yeah, I'm a great follower of the Joe Brown tradition. Never put one beelie on when four will do.
How was that, Max?
Oh, extremely frightening.
I've never been not afraid of falling off, and I think many of the people who lose their fear of falling off are already dead. In 1967, we didn't have proper sit harnesses. Today, you do have a sit harness, so you can leap off into space as young tigers and incontinent old men do frequently, and then you sit in your harness and wait for, to fiddle yourself out and pull yourself up.
If you flash off, you hang in space, you'll last about 2 minutes before you pass out, unless you can get your weight actually onto your feet. So I wasn't really too enthusiastic about doing that.
There is a human factor which makes the public watch these things in case anybody falls off the rock. But we'd also set in place a rescue plan with RNAS Lossiemouth to fly a rescue helicopter in, and we had a marked out landing pad. And had somebody have fallen off during a transmission and not killed themselves, we would have covered that as part of the program.
Well, we'll go over to the east face now and see what Tom Patey is up to. There's Tom. He's a doctor. Comes from Ullapool, West Highland Fishing Port. It's Tom who really had the idea of trying the old man. Many people thought it was utterly unscalable. But the word impossible has no place in the modern climber's vocabulary.
Once I get this on, I'll be able to take the strain off my waist one. That's it on. Foot the loop. Though when I straighten up the foot one, I can push the waist, zoom up the rope a wee bit.
He was one of the great characters of British mountaineering. He was a brilliant mountaineer, and he was also a brilliant, innovative climber. The rope was almost an irrelevance.
You know, the main thing about climbing with Tom was his enthusiasm just made every day with him magic, but you didn't get much sleep.
He could exist on the smallest amount of sleep I have ever sort of come across in my life.
He would drive hundreds of miles, go to a party and climb the following day.
And he climbed for fun. The important thing about Tom, everything was enjoyable.
There they are. We're looking at the south face. Pete Crewe and Dougal, Haston on the edge, over on the left, Joe Brown and Ian McNaught Davis. We shall be back to report their final push to the top at 4:50 this afternoon. Eight minutes to 5 on this very wet afternoon on the cliff tops as we look over onto this soaring great pinnacle of rock. The climbers have really got the bit between their teeth because Pete Crewe and Dougal Haston, who have been inching their way up the southeast arête, have decided to go straight on, making a plumb line to the summit.
There seems to be a nice line up the arête above my head, so we're going to have a look at that.
I can't quite see what you call a nice line. It looks, well, frightening.
Yeah, we'll have to see when we get there. It's really tiring, this climbing. Yeah, I think both Dougal and myself are getting really tired and fed up of it now.
We knew from our audience research and the telephone calls we were receiving in London and Glasgow that the viewers were very much locked into this and were as intrigued as we were to see what would happen.
There on the east face, the radio cameraman at the bottom, Chris Bonington on the right. Now we're looking into this final crack with Tom Patey. Chris Bonington.
No.
Tom seems to be going at a great rate.
Well, this is a terrific pitch. It was the one that I led on the first ascent. Though it's very steep, there are good holes and the rock's absolutely perfect. There's everything to hold on to and you can really bomb up it. This is the hardest point on the crack, if I remember right. It's you've got to get a hand jam there.
Jamming his hands into the crack. They're vertical holds. You can't get any leverage on a vertical hole unless you put your hand into the crack and then close your fist as much as you can till it just jams there with the rock biting into the back of your hand, and then you can swing on that. It's got no more than 15 feet, I should think.
Just about that. It eases off quite a bit there now. You should have no trouble at all getting up to the top from there.
Well, we can see daylight through that crack.
Well, the whole of this pinnacle, on which I'm just below, is completely shattered. I can't help thinking that probably one of these days it'll be toppling over into the sea. Let's hope it doesn't do that today.
Let's hope so.
Just 6 feet to go now, just about, I think. Hello, Chris?
Yes.
Ah, great feeling. Exhilaration. Ah, magnificent.
And there was this cheer in the tent. A triumphant Tom Patey stepped out onto the short grass and the wild flowers at the top of the Old Man of Hoy. And I remember now the shot that zoomed out and revealed him as a speck in the distance on the top of this sheer piece of rock with the crashing waves and the sea below.
There's a tremendous feeling of exhilaration up here. It's like being a little satellite suspended out in space. It's dropping away into nothingness on every side.
The original route on the Old Man of Hoy, which to us in 1966 seemed absolutely desperate, is now a fairly standard route. It's hard VS, isn't it?
Climbed 20, 30 times a
Yeah.
season.
Chris Bonington here in the final crack.
Ah, hello, mate. How are you? Thanks. I must say, it's great being up.
Once the thing's been done, you know, all the unknown quantity goes out of it. It becomes much simpler.
That's the same. It's like the 4-minute mile, isn't it?
I mean, if you don't do a 4-minute mile now, you've got a slow hand clap.
Yeah.
It's amazing how primitive the equipment is. You kind of think, when we did that, we were climbing with the most modern equipment. There was hardly any nuts or any modern protection, no frames for, you know, these expanding things. The things you just take for granted today, and you think, well, I've had these all my life, but they weren't there then. And the scariness of it was partly because of this poor, relatively poor protection that we had compared with what you would get today and take for granted.
And the other thing is, of course, they're trained now. I mean, would you have ever gone into a gym and started pumping iron like they do today?
I used to think standing up and drinking was part of a rigorous training procedure. But the standard of climbing has gone much, much higher. Athleticism, better protection, more understanding, and more gymnastics. It's, as you well know, it's changing to a much more gymnastic sport. But on something like that, when you've got to face up with bad weather, howling gales, pouring rain, loose rock, the full mast start vomiting on you, it's not the sort of thing you get in a closed circuit climbing competition in the Olympic Games. Perhaps we should have full mast vomiting on the Olympic Game climbers. I think it would be great.
It was climbed for the first time last year. Today, 8 men are up there, warming themselves by a fire. Here on the cliff top, we've watched their epic ascent. Let's find out how they're feeling. Chris Bonington, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Well, it's been a tremendously enjoyable climb, especially our route, which was by far probably the easiest of all the 3 routes that were done. But I think for Tom and myself, it hadn't quite got the edge that we had that first time when we climbed it a year ago. I'm sure it must be much more gripping and exciting for Joe or Pete.
It's a beautiful place to be on the summit. The only really gripping bit is having to get down it again. We've got a little fire up here. I was going to tell you it was made of driftwood, but we actually were burning the heather. It's some of the most spectacular scenery in Britain, and I really recommend it to any tourist who's passing this way. It'll take them a bit of time, but, you know, they've got plenty of that in their hands, and they might enjoy it.
Well, they haven't quite got the skill of you lot.
Well, we're only halfway there, Chris. We've still got to get down. This is where it's different to anything else in Britain. You just don't walk down a grassy path alongside. You've really got to go straight down. It's going to take us another hour or 2 to get off.
We had to decide who was going to go down this rope, which looks highly dangerous, and you know, the sort of thing you could easily throw your life away. It looked highly dangerous, and we did it, the 6 of us on the summit, in the way that any other democratic organisation would. We put it to the vote, and the 5 of us voted for Chris.
I can clearly remember hearing on my headphones Joe saying, Chris, the British public know you as the great leader of this and that. You've got to do it. Oh, you manoeuvred him into it.
There's no way. There's no way. It would make sure the descender didn't get hot if we even had to pee on it.
I was definitely put into a position where there was absolutely no way I could get out of it.
Okay, let me go, fellas. Wish me luck. Well, can you hear me, Chris?
I can, Chris.
Well, this is a very novel way. You remember you asked me about vertigo earlier on?
Yes.
Well, I know what it is. I've got it now. Space is below my feet. The most incredible thing is the way the old man seems to taper rather horrifyingly down below me to the ground 400 feet below.
I was absolutely petrified. The actual descent was lovely. You suddenly realise from a state of total terror that you were in a very nice, safe situation. And I think that kind of slightly euphoric relief actually came into my verbosity as I went down.
The rest of the poor suckers who climbed this are having to go down by the conventional method, which means abseiling down the east face. It'll take them an awful long time, and I'll be sitting down there in our little house at the bottom, eating my jam butties.
God. One embarrasses oneself, doesn't one?
It looks fantastically spectacular.
Don't you wish you were here, Chris? And you could be doing your commentary from this position. It'd be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Frankly, no.
I think the Old Man Hoy was a natural for television. It's an awesome place, and I think something of that came through to the viewers.
The shape caught the public's imagination today. Someone who worked in television for 33 years. The only time I ever make an impression, modest as it may be, is when they say, oh, you were connected with the Old Man of Hoy. I can only think it was the shape, the particular team of climbers, and we had a big chunk of luck. But I don't think people will be allowed to take those sort of risks on live television again.
It was a stunning 2 days. When I stepped out of the tent at the end, I couldn't actually stand up. My legs just kind of gave way beneath me, because really, enough was enough. When one wonders whether there might be another Old Man of Hoy sometime in the 90s, I think the change in the viewer pattern, the change in the sort of programs we see in the schedules, the greater competition between 4 networks, and the huge costs of an event like a mountain climb all mitigate against a repeat of anything quite so exciting and adventurous as the Old Man of Hoy was 25 years ago.
Well, Chris, thank you very much indeed. We must leave you now, and really I can only wonder at your skill and those of your companions, and at the concentration of these men. For the Old Man is a very unrelenting pinnacle. It only needed one lapse, one tiny mistake by any one of these men, and the Old Man would have taken its toll. But this is rock on which only the tigers amongst climbers may venture. From the Orkneys, good night.